Welcome into the official. We got a very special show tonight. Unfortunately, a guest that had been lined up was unable to make it this evening. We're doing the interview series for the month of March and maybe into some of April, but these things happen. And so, of course, coming to my rescue are some of the co-founders of C2C. We've got Austin Nace, at least we know he will be here tonight, and possibly other guests along the way to talk about the freshman guide and really get some input. 6 or 7 of us put this together, and you hear the views of myself, Matt, and David every week on the official. But there are other voices and perspectives and processes that went into this guide and go into our rankings of the freshmen as a whole. So you're going to get to peek behind the curtain tonight and listen to kind of what some of the other guys do and what they value, and maybe where the official got some things wrong on some of these guys. We'll see what happens. But thanks for sticking with us. This is the official. All right. Austin, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for covering on short notice. These things happen. Sometimes you line up a guest and they don't show up, but thanks for coming to my rescue. So we have some content for tonight. How are you doing this lovely evening?
I'm so good. I had to hop on here tonight because I take the month of March and February, for the most part, off from all of our shows. So I haven't had the chance to talk. So my wife is tired of listening to me. So I figured I'd hop on here and maybe give it to the people a little bit here this evening.
Well, thank you. And I know you do take March off. I know you're very busy in your day job, those pesky day jobs. So thanks for taking some time tonight. And I kind of want to just talk about the guide, but we will go into that a little bit more. You've heard me talk about it before on the official. But before we get started, of course, go visit campus2canton.com. That's our parent website. Austin could help fill in because I'm not the best pitch man, but we've got rankings, we've got tools, data tools unlike any other in the industry for college fantasy football, for even NFL dynasty fantasy football. If you play anything on the spectrum between dynasty, Devy, campus to Canton, or college fantasy football, we've got everything you need from articles to tools. And of course, the freshman guide, all available for you. Starting at a very low price of $2.99 per month at the lowest level and going up from there if you want all the goodies. Austin, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was everything. I mean, I know, try not to be, too just, pat ourselves on the back every time we hop on a show and stuff. But I mean, I think we're continuing to grow. We actually just tonight, we announced a new project to our NIL members in our Discord. So that'll be releasing here soon at campus2canton.com. It's C2C month, so who knows? Maybe we have more announcements as the next couple weeks come along here. But yeah, just go check everything out over there. The freshman guide, I think, is definitely worth a download if you play in any of these formats. It's unique content; you won't find it anywhere else. And quite frankly, it's the first of 3 guides. We're kicking off guide season here. We just got done with the meeting for the Devy guide, so I mean, all these things are happening. I really wouldn't want to miss out if I were you.
Yes, so we obviously talk a lot about freshmen here on the official, but that's just the thing that I really like, and Matt and everybody, but we've got so much more really along the entire gamut of fantasy football, even with a lot of NFL rookie content for the upcoming draft. So check out campus2canton.com. That's more promotion than I normally do. I'm sure Felix is somewhere smiling. But yeah, so I mean, focus tonight on the freshman guide. So this was just released about a week ago. I would say I have no problem saying this is the most comprehensive freshman analysis anywhere, because not only do we tell you, their stats and what offers they may or may not have, where they go, which you can find on 247.com. We're giving you actual analysis and fantasy implications, taking into account depth chart, taking into account ceiling, taking into account likely role on their team, and putting it in the context of what is this guy going to do for your fantasy team, which nobody in the recruiting industry does. 247, On3, ESPN, Rivals, they are just telling you if this player is good or not, but we are putting it, contextualizing it into the fantasy world. So I think our guide is truly one of the most unique things on the planet. when it comes to freshman scouting. And me and Matt and David talk about that all the time. Austin, what is your general approach? I know that you are a film guy, but we have obviously taken into a lot of account some of these metrics and things that we do behind the scenes in the official. It's kind of the impetus for starting the official was, hey, let's look at recruiting from a little bit of a different angle. Of course, you have to take into account film, but kind of what's your process? Just walk us through. You're one of the 6 or 7 rankers, I guess, on the guide, and your voice is equally as important. So tell us a little about your.
Equally as important, man. That's good to hear. No, so I mean, I think this year was really interesting because I think we changed up a lot about what we do collectively all together. I mean, I think last year we really learned a lot. I think last year's product was good, and I was proud of what we did. But we really fine tuned, from a more standardized grading process. Like we're all using the same templates now to kind of go through and watch these guys and pop out a grade. We've obviously got our trusty sidekick model that Matt uses, that Matt has, that kind of gives you an idea on some of these things, things that we're all familiar with: production profiles, athletic scores, strength of competition gets factored into it, I believe. Like all these things that you think of and no one's ever really thought to quantify or not on a mass scale, we've done. So I think this year is really my first year where like I'd go in, like I'd watch a guy, I'd try not to have any real preconceived notions, except for the fact that, you guys were ahead of me, I think, the whole time, or at least after June, July into the class, you guys would be like, you guys got to go watch this guy.
Yeah.
Okay. I see why they said go watch him. Not always, but I had a lot of those guys. But I did find this year a lot. Like I would go through, I'd watch a guy, I would come up with my own conclusion, and then I'd go in and see that like you guys all like hated this guy, for instance, in this example, and I would be like, okay, like maybe I'm missing something. I'd go look and see, and his arm sucks. Like his max velocity over expected is like negative, or his miles per hour. Like I thought he looked fast on tape, but he's only running 19.8 miles per hour. Or, some of those things where in the past you'd kind of just rely on the eye and the initial watch through, and now I get to kind of consider all of those things. So I did find myself on several guys this year. I'd watch them, and then I ended up tweaking them throughout the process, kind of closer to our median grade. I know you don't do that at all, which is good. I mean, I know you.
I've gotten bullied. No, I think that it's real. Those are all really good points, and that's how I work as well. I mean, I will tweak based on some of those things, and like Matt likes to say, the numbers don't lie. You can look at a guy. There's a guy. I was ready to label him as a true sleeper, a quarterback who's headed to San Diego State. I can't remember his name. It's like a hyphenated, kind of a longer name. But
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, it's like a Polynesian type name too.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. And I watched his tape and I was like, this guy's got some stuff. I mean, he's mobile. I thought his arm looked fantastic. And then, his velocity over expected per Matt's, numbers was really, really low. And I said, does he have a noodle? And Matt's like, I think so. And then I kind of watched it again with that context in my head. And I was like, okay, I can kind of see it. I mean, sometimes you lie to yourself. I think we're humans, right? Sometimes you do watch and you kind of want a guy to be good. And I feel like you make some excuses, or you say, I think that's not bad. That's not bad. But, if you go by the numbers, sometimes these guys just don't have certain attributes, and you have to take into account. So
did you have a guy in this year's class that did the opposite of that? Like you thought he had a noodle, and then we were like, oh, he actually has like a crazy, or the max miles per hour. Because Malachi Nelson was like that for me. Like I thought his arm was like average, and he had like the 6th or 7th best arm in the class. That shocked me when you guys said that.
Right. I don't know if there was a guy like that for me this year. But I, every year it's kind of a new mixed bag of different things. There was a guy who I thought was a lot faster or a lot slower, and then it turns out he was really fast. I can't remember, but that was another one where he just kind of looked like a long stride. Oh, I think it was. It was Cordell Russell. This guy.
Oh, yeah. I agreed. I thought he was tall, like,
with long limbs. And, he just doesn't look like he's running that fast. And he's one of the fastest pure velocities on the ground in our entire class, like over 22. That's like world-class NFL MPH right there. And he just doesn't look like it, but he's just got these strides. Like Randy Moss. I mean, Randy Moss never looked that fast, but he was one of the fastest guys in the NFL. He's 6'4"
at least he didn't look fast, like, until you, like, an isolation. Like if you just watch Randy Moss run by himself a whole 100 yards and there was nobody else within the vicinity of him, you would think, okay, he's pretty fast. Like he looks speedy. Yeah. And then you see that he's gained 10 yards on the corner in like 3 seconds. You're like, okay,
right.
like, yeah, this guy's probably
with those and I think Russell is a guy who could be, I mean, I've bumped him up. I've bumped him up considerably. My original thought was like, oh, he's just this boundary X only guy. You know, I don't love those types anymore. That's just kind of falling out of favor in all levels of football. And like, I just thought he was super limited, and turns out he's not that limited. For one, I learned, but also he just has some absolutely insane athletic ability that I wasn't accounting for because he just kind of looked a little slower. Oh my gosh, breaking news. I think we have a special guest here ready to join us, folks. Maybe not. Maybe we're gonna have a special guest in a few minutes. I'm seeing some
Thank me.
Okay, we do have a special guest.
Thank me. Alfred Austin, it's really your pleasure for having me here, gentlemen. It's really again.
It is. I mean, this is very fun. You guys were both Felix was a maybe. Austin said he'd come on. We're just kind of chewing the fat a little bit on process.
Let's chew the fat.
How we go about, ranking some guys. Austin was saying sometimes he's using metrics then to verify what he's seeing on film or not. Felix, how are you using metrics? I know we all know it's no secret that technology, statistics, and math might not be your forte. You're a talker.
What are you trying to say?
You say it yourself. But anyway.
Listen, I don't think that this is terribly difficult, to be honest with you. I think that the traits that we're looking for in the NFL, everyone knows what they are. You just have to watch enough players to find them and sift them out. Anthony Richardson, whether it be Anthony Richardson, Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Wilson, I mean, we know what makes it to the NFL. There's a certain size, strength, there's speed, there's, the ball comes out a certain way. I don't think that this is terribly difficult to find. Drew Aller has started no games. I can tell you he will be a first-round draft pick in 2025. I just believe that to be true. He just has it. So my process is to look for those things in those players and to watch a lot of them and to find them. I mean, it's really not rocket science, in my opinion. Sometimes there's a guy that's lower rated. Maybe it's a Cal Swanson. Maybe it's a Quinshawn Judkins. Maybe it's an Andrew Paul. Why is Andrew Paul 220 pounds and has a 21.6 miles per hour? He has lateral agility, and he's a 3-star. I don't really care how many stars he is. That is an NFL body type, NFL athleticism. What else? It's not, you don't have to be Daniel Jeremiah to figure it out all the time. So,
I agree with you that on the high end, there are guys that, I mean, you watch enough players like we have here. I mean, I think all of us went at least 150 skill position players deep. So we're not talking overall. We're talking about only of the 3 positions that matter for fantasy, or 4, which is a lot of players when you go 150, 200 deep of only those players. You watch enough, you see it. I mean, sometimes I don't have to watch 30 seconds of tape and I'm like, this is nothing. There's nothing here. Or you watch 2 plays and you're like, okay, there's definitely something here. I mean, it doesn't take that long
for a true sleeper guy. I think they almost have to do something in the first 20
immediate
seconds.
Yeah.
Like if I pop on wide receiver 110 and this dude, it's a little out, there's no release, there's no burst off the line, he catches it fine. It's like, okay,
well,
whatever.
We all know, we've watched enough highlight tapes in games that specifically for highlight tapes, the best play that the player has to offer is always the first play, is play number 1. So if it ain't in the first couple of plays, they don't really have the juice. So I think for some positions you can find that, but for quarterback, you definitely have to watch games because, consistency on a down-to-down basis is just as important as, if you can throw the ball 60 yards. So, that's the one area where I will caution. You really want to see the strengths and weaknesses that a player that has physical gifts at the quarterback position, what those strengths and weaknesses are, because, Michael Pratt is a guy with outstanding physical gifts. I don't know that he's necessarily a NFL first-round draft pick because of his down-to-down consistency. So, just at that position, it's definitely important to watch game long action.
Arch Manning, I think, is the opposite of that in this year's class. Or like I think if you watch and you see he does have that consistency, but I don't think his highlights are like, the most impressive that I've ever watched. I think I could probably name 8 to 10 guys in this class that if I just sat down and watched their first 5 minutes on Huddle, that it would probably look better than Arch. And I think that's been a lot of the kickback on him. But if like you go sit and watch his games, like he's like audibling at the line of scrimmage.
And
like,
drawing guys
high school quarterback is like
audibling
sides. At the line of scrimmage, and
hard counts, multiple hard counts, drawing guys off sides. Like you just don't see that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like Jake Haener. Jake Haener has no physical tools, but he can see a contested catch 40 yards down the field, and without looking to the sideline, a catch that's going to be reviewed, get his team up to the line of scrimmage and run the next play to prevent the replay. I mean,
that's
little
Brady
stuff like that.
That's Brady stuff. These really elite
Austin,
NFL
are you laughing
level
at me
quarterbacks.
for bringing up Jake Haener?
You're just like Jake Haener is basically a bum, but
no, but
those are important things. Yeah,
they're important
things. You watch enough NFL stuff, like the best of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, they're getting PI, and they're not getting PI out of luck. There's, like you said, they're seeing this is going to be a problem for the DB. I'm going to throw it, and it may be caught, or it's going to be PI. Like they're
or
doing
what
this
does
on
your
purpose.
What does your offensive coordinator choose to run on 3rd and 12 from your own 30-yard line? I mean, there are little things like that. There's the difference between Drake May and DJ Uiagalelei in that respect. I mean, you could just see like a team that does not have confidence in its signal caller when you get to those challenging situations in the down and distance, and they're like, you know what? Let's run a draw here and live to fight another down. If you're a college offensive coordinator or a high school offensive coordinator, whatever you're looking, if they don't have faith in you, it's unlikely that you're going to get that endorsement at the next level, whatever.
Also a good point. All right, so we threw out our first real name of the class, Arch Manning. I think we've talked about these players a lot, at this point. But I think the guide is out, and I think we have a nice this is page 8 here. I'm looking, and I thought this was a really nice inclusion this year, which was the tiers from 2022 side by side with the tiers from 2023. And it was kind of eye-opening. I think one thing that is worth talking about right here for our listeners, I don't think this is something that's been talked about too much by the official or even some of our other shows. We changed the way that we graded this year. I mean, we had a more consistent, uniform grading system. And obviously our numbers would come out differently based on how we evaluated players. But, person to person, process to process was a little bit more streamlined. And interestingly enough, I wonder if some of that created a big tier 3. Like we have twice as many QBs in tier 3 this year as we did last year. And we reviewed probably the same amount of total players. Any thoughts on that? The tier 1 is still 3. Tier 2 last year is a couple more, maybe 2 more than this year. And then tier 3 is just massive for us, at least on quarterbacks. Any thought about that, Austin or Felix, in terms of maybe putting these numbers down in a uniform way, had guys, kind of showing up in that middle range? I think when we're thinking about this, usually when you rank people of any kind of ranking, there's going to be that bell curve. These handful are elite, these handful are terrible, and everybody is in the middle. Is that what happened this year?
Which question do you want us to answer here?
Oh.
I have no idea.
Why do you think there's such a big middle group this year versus last year?
I honestly have no answer for it. I mean, we implemented a different system this year than we did last year. So some of this stuff is automated based on the data in addition to, the input we have in our individual values. So, I mean, that's the answer to the question. And quite frankly, it's probably going to be similar moving forward because we will tweak the process, but we have a good baseline to build from in future years. If I'm still around,
I wish people were bigger haters on some of the guys. Like, I don't want us to nuke a kid or write I never want to talk about any of these kids, possibly because we try to build relationships with some of these guys, and we've had Justice Haynes on a show, we've had Kyle McCord on a show, and we've continued to build Ashton Genty, Damian Martinez, and we're trying to continue to these relationships, just to because they're good kids and because we like talking to them and because it's a good relationship to have. So we never want to be like, this dude sucks. This guy will never do anything.
Right.
We try to present, even if we have a lot of unfavorable things in the profile, you can still say, well, he's gotten FBS offers, like he's going to go to a Power 5 school. Like, yeah, maybe he's going to sit there, but that's better than 99.99% of us will ever do at anything in life. But I do think especially in quarterback, is one that was magnified. In my opinion, there's a lot of guys in our tier 3 that I think really don't have a lot of business being there. Like if I was in a C2, I have 23 draftable quarterbacks if you're in a supplemental draft this year. And then I have about 12 guys that made our guide that I just don't think are draftable at this stage, unless you're in a really deep league or your league's quarterback happy and you kind of have to snag these guys early. And I think just some of the guys that fell into our tier 3 that I would say that about, like, I don't have a draftable grade on JJ Cole going to Iowa State.
Same.
I think other than his arm and, prototypical size, quote unquote, there's nothing that he offers that I would be interested in at all. A guy like Zane Flores going to Oklahoma State, I don't think he's a draftable player at this stage because I'm uncertain if he ever actually plays at Oklahoma State. Like, I think there's a handful of guys in there that I'm like, realistically, like, if they can't survive next offseason's waiver cuts at the end of the years, I'm kind of trying to maneuver my roster, then they're probably not worth taking this year. So that, like, there are a handful of guys in there that I just think, like, probably didn't belong. I think that's because some of you guys are too nice with your grades, but at the end of the day, it's 6 or 7 of us. We average together. It pops out the final number. It is what it is.
So be it. Yeah. I mean, no one's going to.
You hit on something there about the answer being, is the player good or bad? Oftentimes the answer is, well, it depends. If you deploy them in this way or that way, or if your team is built, Austin Mack comes off the top of my head. He's a guy with all sorts of physical tools, but was really well protected there in California. And, his strength seems to be the middle of the field. So if you aren't going to protect him and ask him to throw outside of the numbers frequently, I don't know that he can do that. But if you protect him and throw the ball in between the hashes, at least to help him build confidence, he may be able to do that. So if you go to running backs, there are some running backs who can't get to the edge, but they can break tackles. Maybe they can't catch the ball downfield, but they can catch the ball fine on screens. So it's rare. I think it's rare where the answer is a clean yes or no. Is X player good?
Someone took at least 1 week's worth of law school classes. You figure that out real early in the semester. The answer to everything is it depends on the professor. Depends. I didn't read last night. It depends. I don't know if you get cold called. Yeah, I mean, it really does.
Well, you make a good point, and I think Austin touched on something too. And this is where I struggle a little bit to giving guys like really bad grades, like a 1 in a certain category or something like that, because they're all getting FBS offers. So like, I may be like, oh, his accuracy is terrible, but I mean, he's got an Ole Miss offer and a Baylor offer, whatever. And so I'm like, he's not that bad. So it's hard for me to give these guys like a tank grade. So anyway, I think you do wind up with a little bit of a middle ground, but of course we'll keep tweaking it, but it'll be interesting to see because it's very clearly a huge middle class in the quarterback rankings this year.
I think gut adjustments are a big part of that. I'm sorry to hop in here real quick, Alfred. So, and I'm not going to like lie about how I do this. So I sit down, I watch the player. And if I'm like kind of, I do my number grading, and then I have a sheet, Alfred, you've seen it, for every single player that I put down, like all of their information. I link like their 24/7 profile, their on-3 profile, their max preps profile. Like I do like a full write-up on them as well. So then when we go in to do the guide, I sit down and watch a minute or two of them to refresh myself, but I've got my notes here and I've got my grade here, and I can put together the bulk of this write-up that way. So I'm sitting there, with my 2 things, and I'll kind of like write as I'm doing it. I'm grading, and I've got my 2 screens going. And I get to the end, and the grade is like pretty good, but I like watch the player, and I come away, and I'm like, that guy, like, it wasn't anything great. Like, he's probably a slightly below average player for the class for what I've watched so far. I will kind of like bump the numbers down, like even if like in the moment that wasn't like what I felt as I was watching it. If like the totality of the player didn't quite match that, and I did that, for a lot of players, especially as the process goes on. Player has a really good all-star circuit at the end of the year. Okay, maybe I bump him up a little bit. His release package as a wide receiver. Okay, I had him at 3.75. Maybe we'll bump it up to like a 3.9 to, bump him above this guy or to move him into this tier. Like, I think I call them gut adjustments, But I think, I don't know how many of us do them, but I would assume a lot of us do. And I think it's a good thing to do. Like, I think, you don't want to just be married to the grading rubric, and that's like it, and that's all you're going off of. You have to trust your gut at some point too.
Yeah, one thing that I really like about our system is, at least for me, the way I do it. For those who don't know, we basically have a sheet of players, and we sign up to write for them. And the sheet does not have their height, weight, how many stars, what have you. And so, that's where I'm really discovering who these players are without any context. So it allows me to be objective about my feelings for that particular player. So there could be a 3-star player. I'll eventually find out that they're a 3-star at some point at writing them up. But it's just really interesting when, Cal Swanson comes off the top of my head. I'm like, I don't understand why is this guy a 3-star when he can run all over the place. He has a rocket for an arm, and if you watch the games, his offensive line and wide receivers are terrible, specifically that little slot wide receiver who can't catch anything. So, I mean, like I like that. I like being able to go in blindfolded, I guess, without any preconceived notions about what these players are. No, of course, some of the higher name players, those names. Dylan Royola next year, everybody knows who that is. But when I start getting into these freshmen, here in a couple of weeks, because I don't think I'm helping with the Devi guide. I will go in with eyes open and just be able to look at the player on film and see what data David and Matt have put together and see if that's a good player. And it's really like opening a Christmas present every single time you watch a new player. Some of the presents are good. Some of the presents are, sucks.
Returns. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been really good. I try to be rankings completely agnostic when I go in, just like you. Because I just want to watch these players, and I've done this for a pretty good amount of time now, and also done a lot of analytics looking at even the, historically pillars of the industry 24/7 and On3 as a new person. But like their hit rate isn't great. I mean, so why would you, I want to do it on my own because that hit rate, I feel like I can do better. And frankly, C2C was at least as good, and in some positions we were better than the historically foundational recruiting services. So I do think there's a little bit to say, I don't care if he's a 3-star. This guy has it, and I don't know why he wasn't ranked. Maybe he didn't go to the camps or something. There's a lot that goes into those service rankings that isn't quality of play. There's stuff that goes in. So, yeah, I mean, I think, if you see a guy like we had Andrew Paul last year, we're like, he's awesome. And he was really awesome until he got injured. He was running ahead of Branson Robinson. So I think we got that right. But all right, moving quickly to from quarterbacks to running backs, because running backs, despite the way that the NFL is going in college football and the spread and receivers and all this, if you have a stud workhorse running back, that's still the best thing in fantasy. That still might be the most rare thing in fantasy, honestly, a true workhorse running back. 3 down, 30 touches a game in college kind of guy. We only have 1 in tier 1 this year compared to 4 in tier 1 last year. I think as we went through this process, we kind of have been saying for a while, this class is kind of deep. There's a lot of guys you can pick and choose what you like, but there's no one who stands out as a total beast the way that we had 4 guys who were total beasts last year. So, Austin, I know you've already put together a little bit of like your own personal draft strategy as you head into draft season. You've said you wanted to get one of the top 4 quarterbacks and like one of the top 3 or 4 running backs maybe. How are you approaching that this year? I mean, there's not a lot to bank on at running back after we have Baxter in tier 1. And then after that, it's like, maybe I'll wait. Maybe I'll grab 2 or 3 later because there's just depth, not elite high end.
Well, it's funny, and I want to chat here with Felix for a second because, like, I know I actually have 2 players in my tier 1 personally, and Felix Baxter, who is our consensus tier 1 guy, is not your top running back. You have Justice Haynes as your top running back, so I think there is some ambiguity as to. And he's yours too, Alfred. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there is some ambiguity as to, is there just one really good guy and then nobody else is that great? I think there are some other interesting backs, but for me, it is the top 6, and my top 6 are slightly different than ours as a group, and then it's just a bunch of crap. So yeah, I'm trying to get elite. I don't want to say crap. That's rude. It's just a lot
you
of guys.
just got through saying you didn't want to tell.
The profiles are not that projectable, or they're
Yeah.
going to really difficult landing spots, or and when I mean projectable profile, they never caught passes in high school, so we have no idea, or they're 175 pounds today. Like the odds of them getting there are pretty low. So I mean, I think it's a really tough class. I could see. I said this 2 years ago about that class when they came out, like not the Nick Singleton class, the one before that with like
Trevion
Sanders
Henderson
and these guys. And I said, outside of Trevion and Shipley, the next best running backs in this class are all going to be guys that are like way outside the top, like 30, 40, 50. It's just like how that class
and Raheem Sanders was Raheem Sanders a 3-star?
Yeah, and he was an athlete. He was supposed to be
and
a wide receiver.
Athlete, yeah.
And anybody who consumes our content in their C2C leagues had Raheem Sanders on the roster. I kind of forget some of our hits. I mean, but we had Quinshon Judkins last year, and the year before that, Raheem Sanders, who's probably going to be
Devin Neal.
He's going to be running back 2 or 3 in his own class once he comes. I mean, he's like a top 10 overall.
It's not rocket science. I mean, we're all looking for the same things. Rocket Sanders was 6'1", 220, could catch the ball. I mean, this is not fairly difficult.
I do think that, it's not rocket science, but I do think you have, I mean, historically, I believe in this world that we are in, and we've created this website around C2C and all this, but like people just got really uncomfortable moving away from what 247 composite was. I mean, they're like, people just went down those lists, and we came in and said, you know what? Like you're saying, this isn't that hard. Raheem Sanders should be a whatever tier guy. Quinshon Judkins should be a top 10 guy. Nobody else had that. We were saying it all year. And the beauty of C2C is last year, Quinshon Judkins was like 4th, 5th round pick. I mean, you could draft him literally in every single draft. You never had to you never had to give up a high-end pick or something like that. You could have him on every single team. Like you just pick him automatic 4th round, and nobody was even going to challenge it.
So who's that guy this year? Is it Fiedler? Is that the guy?
Not for me.
He's not ready to play running back yet. I mean, I'd really like him.
Oh, so yeah, in the sense that he comes in right away and does something. Yeah,
I think a guy like that for me could be like Cordell Russell. I know we're talking about running backs, but like a wide receiver who's going to be probably overlooked. I mean, he's a fairly high-end guy, but he's a 4-star. But I think.
What do you? I mean, do you have a guy like that, Felix? I know I saw the guy that you're talking about the other day when you said you found your Ramondre in this class.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go. Khalifa Keith headed to Tennessee. He's going to be overshadowed by Cam Seldon there. Cam Seldon, very athletic. Khalifa Keith was injured his senior season, but this is a bigger back, 6'1" or 6'2". He's listed
like
anywhere between 220. Anywhere between 220 and 235. Now, his frame offers your strength and conditioning program a lot of options. You can say, all right, we want to play him at 240, and he's going to be a between the tackles grinder, or we're going to play him a little bit leaner and have him be a more explosive player. I mean, whether or not these guys, it was the same way last year with Amarian Hampton. I was a big fan of Amarian Hampton, and he was one of our freshmen of the week last year. So I'm very
4 touchdowns a game or 3 touchdowns a game or something
with where Amarian Hampton landed, and I would put Khalifa Keith in the same kind of profile as far as running back. Bigger player with very light feet, some speed. I don't know if he can catch the ball, but probably didn't. I had to put him in the guide, by the way. He was not in the spreadsheet. And I'm just here looking for players, and I had to put him in. I'm like, how are we not including this guy? So Khalifa Keith would be that guy for me this year. Now,
and Keith is going to be way down. I mean, you're talking like 10,
he's free.
Round. I mean, he's going to.
I was going to say we're talking about if you draft him, it's the 15th pick in your supplemental draft. Round 44 in the startup draft.
Well, now it's round 12, round 13 because
we make the ADP here at CTC.
I do think there are 2 guys that could fit the category that I didn't love them, but I think that you can see the opportunity. Carson Hansen at Iowa State is one. And for the record, I still believe in Cartavius Norton, but we'll see how he comes back from injury. And can he stay healthy is going to be another question there. But I wouldn't be shocked if Caleb Hicks ends up surprising some people at Oklahoma this year. I don't love Caleb Hicks, but I don't know that he's significantly worse than Javonte Barnes, at all. And the way it seems like they're setting up that backfield is basically splitting it between 2, maybe 3 guys if they have to. But he seems like he's the direct understudy for Barnes. And if something were to happen to Barnes, then I think we see a lot of him because the other options are all small backs. I don't know that they can get away with just running Gavin Sawchuk and Dalen Smothers out there 30 times a game. They'll just get crushed, the both of them. So I think Hicks is a really interesting guy. And he didn't play that much as a senior or at all as a senior. He tried to transfer, or what was the issue with him?
I'm not sure. Maybe I thought he played senior year because
maybe he did. Maybe this, but I mean, so I just think he's a unique guy where I don't know, there's no buzz there, but I could see him going in there and being okay, and if something were to happen, stepping in and doing well.
Yeah, and there's a guy here that I've liked throughout the whole process, and he was a late flip when Purdue and Louisville changed coaches. He was a Purdue commit. Now he's going to Louisville. And he's not huge. He's not like Khalifa Keith. So he's not like what Felix looks for, and this hulking Derrick Henry type guy. But he's 5'9". He's over 200 pounds, 210, I think, 215 maybe. Kewan Brown. And he's walking into a Louisville backfield.
Yeah, that's a good one.
There's nothing. There's nobody. He's not the most physically dominant guy. Usually when we're looking for these sleepers, we're looking like the Damian Martinez. But that was a good one from last year. You could draft him with the absolute last pick in every single freshman draft. No questions asked, and the guy ran for 1,000 yards as a true freshman because he was 220 pounds and ran 21 miles an hour. Kewan Brown isn't quite that, but he's a guy going to a great spot and should be a good offense. Keith Willis Jr. is another one. This is truly a guy you can get in the last pick of every single draft if you want. He's going G5, so I think some of that Power 5 breakout is unlikely unless he transfers, of course. But he is super impressive and going to a backfield that has nobody. I mean, and these are guys that it's just too many players for anyone to really wrap their minds around. And so there is a ton of value late, and which is another reason why, I mean, we don't even get into this, I guess, but drop back in your drafts too. Grab 3 extra picks in the later rounds, and you can find all these guys using our guide.
This is a tough year. It's going to be a tough year on people because, I mean, I'm sure you're the same way, Alfred, especially because you run the official and everything, where I get, once sub-draft season rolls around, 10 different DMs from 10 different people a day. Either they're like, all my league mates are in the Discord, which always actually warms my heart when they say that. I can't post in there because all my league mates are in there.
Give me somebody no one else is talking about. Yes. We talk about everybody. I don't know what.
Or I have to choose between these 5 players, and in reality, this year, I'm lucky enough that I've gotten rid of a lot of my dynasty leagues. I'm mostly just on C2C now. I have 12 to 14 of them, I believe, and I'm not adding any more, but I'm happy with where I am. And across them, in some of them, I'll take Darius Taylor, the running back going to Minnesota. In some of them, I'll probably end up taking Keith Willis Jr. in that same range. And maybe another one, I'll take Caleb Hampton going to Stanford, and another one, I'll take Parker Jenkins. I think this is the year where you just either you have a lot of picks in that range, or across your leagues, it's a portfolio, and it's just diversify. And that might just be, I mean, that is what I'm going to do this year outside of my top 6 running backs. It's just going to be a cluster of whoever I can end up grabbing and whoever falls into a particular range. But so it makes it harder to give advice to people, but I think it's a fun one because, I at the end of the next year, Jamarius Haynes at Clemson might be worthless. Mm-hmm. So in that league, I didn't hit anything, but another one, Michael Mitchell going to Utah, ended up taking the starting job, and I got in a third.
I'm gonna have 2 or 3 more years of 1,500 yards or something because that offense is just gonna pound the ball. So.
Yeah.
Let's skip wide receivers just for the sake of time. I mean, I think you can find some elite guys, but for the most part, receiver, you can always find a receiver almost. I mean, except for when you're talking about the real big difference makers. And move to tight end. And this is a position we take seriously here at C2C. Whereas I think a lot of places and services,
we don't talk about it on any of our shows or any other stuff, but we do take it seriously. I promise we do.
Well, no, but in our evaluation and stuff, and we got Chris Moxley, who's always about taking early tight ends in his freshman draft. This year, there's a guy I really like. I've been beating the drum for so long. Deuce Robinson. What are you doing with him? He's an interesting story this year. And then, do you have another guy that you're like, I do want to try to leave a decent number of drafts with a one particular other tight end as you've gone through all these guys? I mean, we ranked what, like 10 to 15, which
Yeah,
I think is pretty impressive just because it is a forgotten position. And I think at this level, it's hard to project. It's one of the harder ones to project. There's so much weight that needs to be gained. Will they retain athleticism, role in an offense? All that's hard at tight end, I think. So anyway, anyone you are really zoning in on, and what are you doing with Deuce?
Yeah, every year there's like a non-zero chance, and that feels like it trivializes it that like a DN ends up being the best tight end of the class.
Yeah,
it's a guy that we're not even talking about today, so it does make it difficult. Regarding Deuce, I think he's totally at this point, at this stage in what the information that we have is how like a risk reward, like how much risk are you willing to take on proposition. And I think it starts relating to the cost that you have to spend to get Deuce Robinson. If I have to spend a first round supplemental pick on this kid, yeah, I'm not going to do that because it's a tight end. It's a position that doesn't necessarily hold a ton of value. The guys that do are few and far between, but because we might never actually see him play football. And you guys have talked about it on the show. I mean, I listened to the official weekly. I don't think he wants to play football.
I don't either.
I think if you gave him the option today, like you're going to get drafted in the top 50 picks of the MLB draft, and that like you have to choose that, he would say, sold, who's taking me? Where am I going? I'm sure if a team does that, like I'm not that familiar with baseball. I live in Pittsburgh. I'm a Pirates fan. Like I've literally had nothing to be happy about my entire life in that regard. But like when they draft these guys, they have like a range of, they basically have like buckets of money that they can give and they can spread it out amongst the players. So if you're taking a guy like Deuce Robinson at that value as an MLB team, you're probably going to spend more than the draft slot is worth out of your bucket of money. Because if you're taking him there, you believe in him and you want to lure him away from football to make him a baseball player. So like the scenarios where he doesn't play football ever, I think are way more realistic than people want to believe. So I think you start considering him around pick 20 to 25 in a draft, but I can't stomach taking him before that, especially with this is such a good tight end class. I mean, Felix, you just popped back in here, so you must have something you want to say about the tight ends here. Do you have a guy that you love, or what are you thinking about Deuce Robinson?
I don't have a guy that I love. I'll tell you this, though. If any kid has the opportunity to be drafted by Major League Baseball, they should absolutely take that opportunity. You can kiss Georgia or USC or whomever's football program goodbye, because it's just the smart decision financially to go play that sport that doesn't take as much of a toll on your body that you play in the summertime, and that you can play until you're 45 years old.
Jeff Samardzija, baby. Anybody remember Jeff Samardzija?
Oh yeah, he was
Brady
Quinn. What do you mean? Do people remember Jeff Samardzija? I mean, that was not that long ago.
I wish we could live poll our entire membership at C2C while we're doing this show to see how many people remember. I bet it is fewer than you want to believe.
It was longer ago than you realize, but yes, I do remember Samardzija. I also remember rostering him in plenty of baseball leagues, and he's a pretty infuriating pitcher, but he still made it all the way. Bye, Felix. Thanks for joining. Okay, so I agree with you on Deuce, and I just want to take a very small victory lap. I haven't done this too much because Matt gave me so much crap about it.
Deserved.
I said this guy doesn't love football. Okay, he never seemed to be a guy that didn't have that dog in him. Okay, and I did not love his athleticism is undeniable, but I just didn't think like this guy's not going to make it. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he will be the next Darren Waller. But I think right now I'm looking a little bit smart. Then I'm going to throw out another name here. I think you and I both really like Andrew Rappelier. Pretty much the opposite of Deuce Robinson, where like this guy freaking eats. Like he's going to be annoying in how much he loves football. Like he's going to be that guy in the locker room who's just like, I love to come to practice every single day, and everyone's going to roll their eyes. But he's going to make it. I think this guy looks to me like an NFL tight end already. He's got the requisite size. He's got enough twitch. I mean, that's the thing with him is twitch. I don't know about the super long speed, but like he can run routes. He can, quick outs. He does all sorts of stuff behind the line of scrimmage as well. taking handoffs, kind of that modern tight end that becomes a little bit of a move guy, in addition to just being in line and even bumping out wide. But we see some of these tight ends in the NFL now taking handoffs, things of that nature. I really like him. I will try to draft him, and I think he's going to be fourth, fifth, sixth round. I mean, unless you listen to the official and you've heard me talk about him, I don't think there's a lot of people that are like pounding the table for Andrew Rappelier. But I would love to, like, it's the first tight end in a while that I've been like, I really want this guy on a lot of teams.
He was, quote unquote, a victim of my late in the process gut adjustments. He was my tight end 2 and ended up bumping down to my tight end 3. So it's not like he, got nuked or anything. He actually got jumped. I didn't adjust him. I adjusted somebody above him. It's really funny. You're sitting here talking about him like, I like the twitch. Is he very fast? And I'm sitting here going, yeah, I feel like maybe like Hawkinson is a guy. And I have the guide open over here. So I went over to it and I pulled up his thing. And our athletic comp and our athletic database for him is TJ Hawkinson.
And he plays like that.
So first off, the athletic comp tool is really, really good. If you watched the combine this past week and we're like looking at some of the ones like the guys top, whatever was like, they were very, very good. So major shout out to Matt and David and you guys for collecting all that data and continuing. But if you look at like why I think this is such a good tight end class, you looked at the athletic comps for our top guys here. Deuce Robinson, his athletic comp is Darren Waller. Rappelier is Hawkinson, and they have a very good, raw athletic score. My big guy, Pierce Spurlin, that I think is probably my preferred tight end of this class going to Georgia. His is Eric Gilbert, the 6'6", 240 kid that moves like he
Which
does.
From an athletic comp is great. I think we all know at this point there's some other stuff going on, but pure athletic comp, that's what you want.
I mean, we've seen Eric Gilbert unleashed once, and he was really, really good when he was unleashed and ready to go. You've got a guy like Kenyon Sadiq, who his athletic comp is Tony Moeaki. I don't remember how many people love Tony Moeaki. He was probably a guy, honestly, that was ahead of his time a little bit in the NFL.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that now.
Jets,
looking back, me like, floated
around a little bit, but I think he would have been a better player. And then Kamorian Pimpton, who we actually don't have an athletic comp for, but he's, 6'6", 220. You guys talked last week, has like the biggest wingspan in the class, like, kind of checks all those secret boxes that Vanderbilt has somewhere because they're a bunch of nerds and they've cracked the code on this stuff. So, I mean, it's a really, really interesting class. And I think any of those 5, I'm probably going to try to grab at least one of them in all of my drafts. I'm really hoping it's Spurlin if I can help it. I just think like Georgia's not afraid to roll out 2 or 3 tight ends. Like we might see him this year, and he's already 6'6", 240. Like he's probably ready to play. They're probably not going to ask him to block a lot. They didn't ask Brock Bowers to block a lot as a freshman either. Like they'll figure out if you're good enough because they haven't recruited wide receiver as well. So Spurlin's my guy, but I think Rappelier, I really like him. I really, really like Pimpton. I really, really like Sadiq. Like I like all 5 of those guys. And then there's even some deeper names that we threw in here going to pretty much known tight end develop type places that I think will be or could be interesting names 2 or 3 years down the line here as they continue to grow. And at 6'6", 215, this guy Joey Schlaffer going to Penn State. Like probably won't hear from him for a year or 2, but it's just a name you keep in the back of your mind and it could be something.
Yeah, I mean, when you get down to like you're talking about some 5'8" slot receiver who's wide receiver 74, or you could take, like you said, this guy going to Penn State, or Lawson Lucky going to Georgia, as their tight end 2 in the class. I don't hate taking a tight end there. I think we all just I know for a long time I've been like, well, a tight end you just don't know, and it's going to take 2 to 3 years to get ready, to basically mature and actually show up on the field. But, a difference-making tight end is really great. So if you're just taking some slot receiver who you don't know much about, or you could get a higher-end tight end, I would try to do that. So
it's funny that you say that because I am in some like deep D-Gen C2C leagues. Like I have multiple leagues that are like 20 teams, 24 teams, 28 teams, like single copy college side. Like you are digging deep. Mm-hmm. And I find in those leagues that I actually end up with more tight ends because the other options become less appealing and people aren't really necessarily paying attention to the tight ends. Like I had one last year that I took like RJ Maryland really late. I took the kid that's at Arizona who didn't do as much last year as we thought. I took the kid that's at Oklahoma that I liked a lot last year. Like there were like 5 or 6 of these guys, and I just get to the end and I'm like, well, kind of out of running backs, kind of out of wide receivers, but I got like six tight ends here, so let's just stash a couple of these guys. And I mean, then, you catch some of these guys early, like Maryland. I mean, that's a problem.
I think it's a bit of a myth too. I mean, we'd have to crunch some numbers, but I think we assume, you need 2 to 3 years to mature as a tight end. I'm not sure that's always the case. I mean, they'll find a way to get the ball in your hand if you're athletic. Maybe you're not going to be in line, blocking for the 4th and 1 where they need a yard, but like they'll get you on the field. I think these teams are using these tight ends in creative ways. So I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion you won't see a guy for years. Well, we have gone way over. Normally you try to keep this show to 30 minutes, but as a special guest, Felix dropped in. I think everybody will enjoy all the things we talked about. Maybe I'll have to use 2 sides of their commute to get through it. But, thanks so much for jumping in on short notice, talking through the guide. And I really appreciate all the work that you do. Obviously we talk about the official all the time, but Austin does so many things for the website. On the back end and a lot of the, not so fun kind of businessy things. And so appreciate everything you do. And Felix, he's not here anymore, but we love Felix and he's the hype man, the propaganda guy. So glad you guys could join us. Thanks for coming on the official. And anything else you want to say? I guess enjoy the rest of your, well, it's not a month off because your real job is actually a big deal right now. So it's definitely not a month off.
We're recording. It's 8:50 p.m. Eastern. I will probably go back to my accounting job for the next hour and a half. So
brutal stuff.
I tried to do it. I did do it last year. It sucked. I refuse to do that again. So.
Well, I will let you go, get back to accounting. I'm glad you were able to give us a few minutes of your time. And, with that said, this has been The Official.